Welcome to the Dr. Francavilla Show. I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Francavilla, board-certified family physician and diplomate with the American Board of Obesity Medicine. I've been helping patients lose weight to treat and prevent medical problems for the last 10 years, and I'm taking what I've learned from them to you. In this podcast, you will learn the science behind why you struggle with your weight and what to do about it, tips for common challenges, work to fight bias about what a healthy weight really is, and improve your relationship with food and your body. Please remember that while I'm a doctor, I'm not your doctor. This podcast is meant to be informational in nature only, not medical advice. Please seek out care from your physician for your specific needs. Okay, let's get started. Hello there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Dr. Francavilla Show. Today, we are going to talk about something that I address with my patients pretty frequently, which is being hard on yourself, beating yourself up, and putting blame, shame, judgment around yourself and the reasons why you're not able to make changes in your health or your life, and beating yourself up over those things, just being hard on yourself. And in case you don't think this episode applies to you, it probably does. We are all hard on ourselves in different ways. And I'm going to help you maybe recognize that a little bit today and also give you a lot of reframes, different ways to think about those, looking for some strength in yourself, hard things that you have done before, and changing that mindset a little bit about being so hard on yourself as a way to push yourself to be successful, because I don't think that that is the best way or the most likely way to make change in your life. I really find that my patients beat themselves up, but it doesn't make them do a better job. And so by being kind to yourself, I think that you, number one, will have less stress and depression and anxiety and overwhelm. But I think you also may be more likely to reach your health goals. So join me today as I give you some different ways to think about that mindset of beating yourself up and being hard on yourself. So I think the most common way that I see this play out in my clinic is by comparison. And there's an expression that comparison is the thief of joy, right? So if you get a new house and you're really excited about it, it's what you'd always wanted. And then you go to visit a friend or stay at an Airbnb and it's even better, right, than yours. It's bigger. It has a hot tub. It has a better view. It has more bedrooms. It has a fresher coat of paint, whatever. Then you compare to that, and this thing you were perfectly happy with before, this new house to you that was perfect, now doesn't seem as good. And so that's that concept, right? Of comparison is the thief of joy. So don't let yourself do that to yourself. And people do that all the time when they are trying to change a health habit, when they're trying to get fit, get stronger, run faster, and when they are trying to lose weight. And comparison is really not fair, because unless you happen to be an identical twin, no one else is just like you. No one else has gone through the same life struggles. No one else has the same biology. No one else has the same background. And comparing yourself to a friend or your partner or a neighbor is probably not going to make you feel better. And it's probably not going to make you be more successful at whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. So, a personal story around this: a couple weeks ago, I was talking to my neighbor across the street, and we're both going to run the same half marathon. And I said, "Hey, do you want to like drive down there together so we don't have to both find parking? We can hang out until it starts. We don't have to run together or anything, but we'll drive down together." And she's like, "Yeah, sure, that sounds great." And I was like, all right. Yeah, yeah, we don't have to run together or anything like that. Like, how fast do you run?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm shooting for like 8-minute miles." And to me, 8-minute miles for a half marathon is like crazy fast. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah, no, we will not be running together. I'm shooting for like a 10.5-minute mile pace. And I think some people in that situation could start comparing themselves in this negative way. Like, oh, what's the point? This other person is so much faster than me. Like, why am I even doing this? What's the point? And for most of us who are doing these races, we're not doing them to win them. We are doing them to push ourselves, right? I'm pretty excited about the idea of running 10.5 minute miles. I might not be that fast, but that's what I'm shooting for. And I'm also doing it as part of a bigger plan to run a marathon where I will have to run slower to be able to complete my marathon. And so my reason for this race is maybe different than hers. She's trying to run the fastest half marathon. She's maybe training more than I am, and she might just, I don't know, be naturally better than me. And so by comparing, I could be taking away my enjoyment or the proud feeling I'll have when I finish it. And there will be people who are faster than her, and there will be people who are slower than me. And if either one of us gets stuck in comparing ourselves, we're going to probably ruin that experience for ourselves. The only people that we really have a right to compare ourselves to are ourselves. And so for me, that means I'm going to do the best I can to stick to my training program. I'm going to, get the sleep and the rest I need to prepare for this race. And I'm going to do the best I can to do what I think is the best, which for me, I think is 10.5 minute miles, right? I'm going to shoot for that. And if we do too much comparison, again, we're just going to frustrate ourselves and then we may give up and quit. So I see this with people when I have a couple who will come in and they are both trying to lose weight. Sometimes they're doing the same plan, different plans. Sometimes they're on the same med or different meds. And it can be really frustrating because one partner or the husband or the wife is usually losing weight a lot faster than the other. Probably not surprisingly, usually the man or the husband is losing weight more rapidly and the wife isn't. Though the one time I remember when that wasn't happening, the husband actually had type 2 diabetes, which makes it a lot harder to lose weight. I did a podcast episode with Dr. Harold Bays on that, why it's harder to lose weight when you have type 2 diabetes. But nonetheless, for lots of different reasons, the two people in the relationship living in the same household will lose weight at different rates. And it can get frustrating and I have to redirect them like, but your goal was to lose 10% and you are on track to do that and you are feeling better and you are moving more and you are eating a more healthy balanced diet. So instead of comparing yourself to someone else who has a very different body and life than you, even though you live in the same house, let's compare yourself to you and you are doing a ton better than you were before, right? Your blood work looks better. Your number on the scale is going down, even if it's not as dramatic as you want, and you're feeling good, right? And you're making positive health changes. So I think the one way that that comparison can actually be helpful is when you use it to be inspired. So when you hear how fast someone is running and you realize, well, maybe that's possible, right? As opposed to being like, oh my gosh, that sounds impossible. I could never do it. Well, maybe that inspires me to run just a little bit faster, right? Maybe it makes me think in the future, not this year, but maybe in a few years, I could be in that place. And so I think it's great to be inspired by what other people are doing and think maybe I could do that too, or maybe I could do a little more when you see that person, but not judging yourself or beating yourself up because you live different lives. And it is unfair to compare your weight loss or your success in any manner of your life to someone else. Okay. Mindset change number 2 is around starting over. And this is a really important one because most of us are not going to be able to do the same habit every day forever. So, whether that's as simple as something like eating breakfast or eating vegetables every day or eating a very specific diet like a plant based diet, there's might be a time where your plan gets interrupted due to busyness or travel or illness or a pandemic. Who knows? We can't always picture the things that are going to happen to us in our life, but things happen and sometimes we just get tired and we just don't want to do the thing. We've been exercising for weeks and we just want a couple days off and all of a sudden it's been a week and we haven't moved. You can always start over. And so that's one of the kindnesses to show to yourself when you want to beat yourself up and say, oh man, I haven't been following the plan. I haven't been exercising. I haven't been taking my medication. I haven't been following my nutrition plan. Instead of beating yourself up, you can tell yourself, I can start over. And not I can start over on May 1st or I can start over on Monday. I can start over the next minute, right? The next bite is an opportunity to change what I'm eating. The next time I have free time is the next time I can move. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. It doesn't have to be next month. It doesn't have to be the beginning of a year. It doesn't have to be once daycare finally starts for my kid or once job calms down. Like, let's take this opportunity to restart anytime. And sometimes that's restarting many, many times. I guess today is all about running for me, but last year I was not able to run very much because I had a couple dental surgeries and a back injury. And so I really wasn't able to stick with any of my goals there. And as soon as I was able to, though, I started getting back to it, right? So instead of waiting for the new year to start or to schedule a new training program for a new race, it was just like, okay, like the back is better, the teeth are healed, time to get back on. And I'm going to be slower and there's going to be walking because I haven't been able to train, but it is better than nothing, right? It's okay to start over. So give yourself that kindness that even if you've been going through a rough patch with whatever your goal is that you're trying to follow, that's okay. You're just going to go ahead and restart. Another mindset that can be helpful when you're beating yourself up or finding it hard to get started or restart something is to think about what hard things you have done in the past. So sometimes when we start comparing ourselves to other people, we think like, "Oh man, I really haven't done much. I haven't accomplished much." Or you see someone who you're really impressed with and you think, "Wow, they do so many amazing things. Like I don't know how they do it and I haven't done anything like that." Start beating yourself up, dwelling on your faults. Reframe that. Think of something positive. And we'll get to this at the end because that's going to be your homework. But think about some hard things that you have done in your life and write them down. So maybe you finished a degree. Maybe you were the first person in your family to finish high school or college. Maybe you defended a dissertation and got your PhD. Maybe you went to med school. But what hard thing have you done that other people maybe are not able to or haven't been able to do or that you're just proud of, even if hundreds of thousands or millions of other people have done it, something that makes you proud? Maybe delivering a baby, right? Yeah, lots of people have done it, but it's still hard. You can be proud of yourself for delivering a baby, taking care of an infant. You can be proud of yourself for that, right? Other people have done it. It's still hard. Getting a child all the way through childhood and getting them out of your house at 18 as a successful adult human. That's an accomplishment, right? These are things that you can look at. Like, I survived 18 years of raising a kid. Maybe you had a bunch of kids. You survived 25 or 30 years of it, right? Maybe you've been married for 20 years. That's a hard thing. Maybe you've supported a loved one through dying. That's a really hard thing. Maybe you've jumped out of an airplane. Maybe it was really scary to you and you did it anyway and you were really proud of yourself for skydiving, or maybe you had to do it in the military or something. Maybe you've left an abusive relationship. Maybe you got Taylor Swift tickets when no one else could get them. But I feel confident that if you do a bit of a dive, you will find something, hopefully a few things that you have done that you're proud of. And if you can't find those things, then maybe you can call on a loved one to help you figure out what those things are. The next thing I would like to discuss is if you are having a really hard time following through on your goals, there's probably a reason. And what my patients will say is, I know there's no excuse. And I always say, no, there's lots of excuses. I don't like to call them excuses. I like to call them explanations. So it's not an excuse that you haven't worked out because you're too busy. It's an explanation. You haven't worked out because you're working 12-hour days and you don't have time. How can we work within that framework, right? So getting out of that excuse mindset, and every time you find yourself blaming that like this is just an excuse, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. So maybe the reason you're struggling to follow through on things is that you actually have untreated depression. Maybe the reason you're struggling to follow through on things is that you have untreated ADHD. Maybe it has become harder to lose weight because you have a metabolic condition like menopause, diabetes, or hypothyroidism going on. Maybe you have sleep apnea. Maybe that's why you're tired and don't have energy and are struggling with your weight, right? So, those are things that a clinician, a physician who practices obesity medicine, like me or my colleagues, can help you sort out. Is there a reason medically that these things are harder? Sometimes there's also just a logistical reason, right? When people are busy, busyness is a real thing. People say, no, it's not an excuse. Well, if you are working 10 hours a day and you're making dinner for your family and you're taking care of your kids and you're somehow getting them to kids' activities and you're trying to get enough sleep a night, well, that doesn't leave you time to do much else, right? not an excuse, it's an explanation. So if we're trying to get more movement in and we look at your schedule for the day and there literally is not a time for you to move, something has to change, right? That's an explanation. It's not an excuse. It's a real thing that's happening. So maybe that means that you're going to have to get a peddler and move your feet or an exercise pad that you can walk on while you're working. Maybe you're going to have to take a break once an hour for 5 minutes during your workday and do a few squats and push ups against the wall and walk up a flight of stairs, right? Maybe we're going to have to be creative with how we get that movement in during your workday. If the real explanation, not excuse, explanation is that you are working 10 or 12 hours a day, right? So when we have an explanation, we can do something about it. Sometimes people will say this expression like, facts don't care about your feelings, right? You can feel bad, like you can feel sad that you're not doing anything you're supposed to. You can feel bad about it. You can beat yourself up. None of that's helpful. What are the facts? The facts are you're working 10 or 12 hours a day. Well, the fact is you may not have time to exercise. How do we work within that framework, right? The fact is you don't have time to cook a meal from scratch every day. Okay. How do we work within that framework? Can we get food that's frozen or delivered or pre-prepped or healthier restaurant food, right? How do we work within that framework? Because a lot of times there really is an explanation. It might be something medical or mental health that's making it really hard for you to achieve your goals. It might just be that logistically you don't have the bandwidth to do that thing. How do we make it a little easier? How do we go back to the it's okay to start over, giving ourselves kindness and grace, not comparing, right? I often talk about in my ideal world, I'd live on my own ranch. All my food would be made there. I would know it was organic. I would know how it was made and prepared. It would be all delicious and fresh and organic. And I don't live on a ranch like that, right? So I do the best I can with the food I can get other places, right? So do the best you can to achieve your goal. If your goal is to eat more vegetables, that may mean picking a salad at a fast food restaurant as opposed to picking the burger, but it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you have to start making everything at home because that just may not be realistic. And then this is maybe we should have started with this, but if you're having a hard time with constantly beating yourself up and being hard on yourself, one of the easiest solutions to that is to talk to yourself how you would talk to a friend. And maybe that's why it's gotten easier for me over the course of my life to be kind to myself and notice this because I do it all day with my patients. But if you were talking to a friend, how would you talk to them? You would probably say you were proud of them. You would probably tell them that they're doing the best they could. You might help them troubleshoot or solve the problem, but you wouldn't beat them up, right? That wouldn't be a very good friend. Like, yeah, you really just don't have your act together. I don't know what your excuse is. I feel like you're not even trying. Your friend, if they're a friend, would never tell you that, right? They'd be like, I think you're being hard on yourself. I think that you are doing a good job. I think you're doing the best you can. I think you're sticking with it. I'm proud of you. I think you keep starting over. I think that's hard to do. I'm proud of you. So talk to yourself how you would talk to your friend when you find yourself getting in this pattern of being hard on yourself. I guess a last final note I'll say here is that if you're working with someone, whether it's a physician or a personal trainer or a coach, and they have this old school mindset that like beating you up, making you feel bad about things, like you just need to work harder sort of mindset, and that's not working for you, maybe it's time to find someone new who can help coach you in a different way because I think that's old. Like we don't need to do things that way anymore. We can be kind to ourselves and give ourselves grace and still achieve our goals. All right. So I kind of already hinted at it, but your homework today is to find at least one thing, but ideally, like at least three different things that you are proud of yourself for. They can be things you did 20 or 30 years ago. They could be something you did recently. They can be kind of silly. They can be something, very personal. You don't have to tell other people what they are, but you need to really think about that thing that you're proud of, that thing you've accomplished at some point in your life and when you're having a hard day and you're beating yourself up or you don't think you can do something, I want you to go back and remember that hard thing that you've done before and recall on that strength and tell yourself, I've done this hard thing. I can do this new hard thing. In fact, that's actually my mantra when I do run, which is I do hard things so I can do harder things. If I can run 3 miles, I can run 6 miles. If I can run 6 miles, I can run 12 miles. If I can run 12 miles, I can run 15 miles. If I can run 15 miles, I can run a marathon, right? If I can run a marathon, man, I feel like I could probably do just about anything, right? So draw on your previous successes, and that power from within that you will get from that can be pretty amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope that this was helpful for you to kind of think about that you might be hard on yourself sometimes. It might be coming from that comparison, that it's okay to start over. Think about the hard things you've done before. And if there seems to constantly be roadblocks in your way that sometimes don't even make sense, you don't know why you're not able to achieve your goals, that's a great time to meet with a physician or meet with a coach and see if someone from an outside perspective can help you figure out where you need to go next to achieve your goals. All right, until next week, take care.
Thank you for listening to the Dr. Francavilla Show, where we learn about all things related to weight and health. If you love this podcast, make sure to leave those 5-star reviews and share this podcast with a friend or loved one. If you have a topic about weight and health you want me to tackle, head over to the website, thedrfrancavillashow.com, to submit your question. And make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss next week's episode. Take care.